things in the name of the people when you are not communicating with those people, briefing them how far you are, briefing them about even challenges that you could be encountering, and so on. So I'm very happy to be on this program, especially coming on the back of some major events that have happened in our economy in recent days, including today. As you are aware, the president has been on the Copper Belt for a 2 days state working visit yesterday and today, and very monumental events that have happened. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Father. Just to break the ice, how have you been?
I can't complain. God has been very good to me and my family. Health-wise, I can't complain.
That's fantastic. So it's okay that I call you Father,
I like to say, Fuema vita turoala.
I'm sorry, I'm not Bemba. I'm from the East, very much from the East. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it means that bad people or ugly people rarely get sick. Because when some people don't like you, they would pray that you would get sick or something bad would happen to you. So that expression is put aside. But Bemba is a crazy language.
I just love it.
You shouldn't take it literally.
Yes, not a problem.
Yeah, so I can't complain personally. I've been very well. God has been very good to us. I don't remember when I lost my appetite. I've not had malaria since 2012 when I moved to Lusaka, and for me that is something very important.
That's fantastic. That's
because when I was on the Copper Belt, I used to get malaria more than 4 times in a year. Since I moved to Lusaka, I've not had malaria. So when somebody says to me, Father, Copper Belt, Copper Belt, we should come back, I said, until you eliminate malaria there.
But Father, we're so glad that you could join us and able to have this conversation with us right here.
Please.
All right, now take us back to August of 2021. Just paint the picture for a marketeer, say, in Soweto. What exactly did the UPND inherit?
Allow me to begin in this manner. Before you get married, when you are in courtship, promises are made. Promises are made. How it's going to be when you get married. Regardless of having made promises as such, when you are marrying on wedding day, on D-Day, maybe you're at the council, depending on what kind of a marriage you are contracting. Let's take it's a statutory marriage. You are at the council. You still are made to hold the Bible, to repeat after the presiding officer, making promises and commitments called marriage vows. And they're supposed to be taken seriously. But in addition to that, you will have made a lot of promises about buying somebody a car, which you may not say on this occasion. But when you promise that you are going to love your wife, you are going to love your husband, those promises are taken to be part of that love. Now, when we come to governing a country, during campaigns, promises are made. Similar to what happens when you're in courtship. But when the president is now being sworn in, he is made to hold the Bible, and the president is sworn in. What follows is the president delivering a speech. And in that speech, he makes promises. In that speech, the president, the incoming president, the new president also outlines his vision, what he expects to achieve, which is a form of promising. That is in addition to the other promises that could have been made. And on that day, just like at the council when you are contracting marriage under that legal statute, it's a very sober moment. The excitement of campaigns, the excitement of courtship is gone. It's now about commitment. So that's what happens in the country, and that's what President Hakainde Hichilema went through, like other presidents. Now, you asked me the question, how do we paint the picture to the Zambian people in terms of what the UPND government inherited? it shouldn't be us as UPND to paint the picture. It shouldn't be us. Our duty, our responsibility, or our task is simply to ask the Zambian people themselves. They knew that this country was debt-ridden. That burden of debt was real. Zambians were told in no uncertain terms that the country had borrowed a lot of money and that the country had failed to pay back. Zambians were informed that it was necessary to achieve debt restructuring that would give the country relief and credit worthiness, which is very, very important in terms of managing an economy. Zambians know about this. There were a lot of challenges. I don't want to talk about the political challenges and so on, because unless you drive me in that direction, and I would gladly do, but focusing on the economy. Because of debt, that debt burden, the country was under pressure. It means that the monies that this government, the government was collecting at that time, was not enough to service the debt. It was not enough to recruit more teachers. It was not enough, in addition to these other competing needs, to recruit more health workers, build more schools, and so on. It was not enough. I know some people would argue to say, well, but the government did so up to a certain point when it could no longer borrow, when it could not borrow anymore. So that's the scenario where we are coming from. In terms of reserves, it was very low. About 1 month of import cover. The inflation was high. And I'm happy that, I think you were just making a comment on that when I was here. As you continue, you were doing your continuity, you made reference to what has just been announced today. Inflation further dropping to below 7%. I think last month it was 7.5%. Now it is
7.1.
7.1. Now it is 6.5.
Yes, 6.5.
6.5%. That's where we're coming from. Unfortunately, that situation was compounded by drought. So, therefore, the UPND government had to deal with two deadly Ds. The first D, debt. The second D, drought. And these two created a lot of stress on Zambian households, created or put a lot of stress on government itself. But when debt restructuring was achieved, indeed, a lot of relief on the part of government. President Hakainde Hichilema is on record describing the debt like a kind of python that was around the neck of Zambians, making it difficult to breathe, trying to suffocate us. That's the kind of pressure that debt was having on our economy, and therefore the well-being of every Zambian. So upon achieving debt restructuring, upon debt being restructured, then government has had good breathing space, headroom, creditworthiness restored, more investment coming into Zambia, and the government now, like never before in the history of this country, recruiting thousands of health workers, recruiting thousands of teachers, and so on. Confidence restored in the mining sector, as every Zambian knows, and just yesterday, groundbreaking for Mingomba. So that's where we are coming from. But at the end of the day, the UPND government is not saying we haven't achieved as expected by some people because of the problems that we inherited or the problems that we found. The UPND doesn't run with that argument for a simple reason that the UPND sought office, as President Hakainde Hichilema continues to say, asked to be given a chance to govern this country in order to resolve those problems in addition to other challenges. So we as UPND cannot say, no, this has not been done because of what we inherited. We knew what was at stake. We knew the problems that this country was facing. I know some people may say you are speaking as if you have always been UPND. I mean, when you join a political party and you have been given a responsibility such as I've been given to speak, you speak even for a period that you were not part of that team as if you were there. Because you are not speaking from the wealth of your personal wisdom and knowledge, but from that of the party. That's how things work.
All right. Now, are you able to name, I know you've touched on the issue of the debt restructuring and how it has helped the country to, have credit worthiness and being able to be more productive. Are there any other 3 campaign promises that you would consider have been fully fulfilled, not in progress, but done? And for each, are you able to give us a before and after, just for the sake of say the taxi driver who's listening in Matero?
There are many promises that have been fulfilled in full, and it's not for me and for people in the UPND to make the Zambian people aware, because these are things that they have experienced themselves. We may remind them. We may mention, because some people may not know, because some people may think that only 2 promises or a few promises have been fulfilled, and because they have not been affected or impacted by other promises in other sectors which have been fulfilled, then we try to also let them know that even this has been fulfilled, even this has been fulfilled. The president has been a very, very robust and effective communicator. And that's the kind of leader that every nation requires. A leader that is able to walk with the people and at every turn inform them what is happening, what is being achieved, what is yet to be achieved, and so on. Just today, those who listened to the president on Radio Ichengero on the Copper Belt, which was the also, I think, relayed by ZNBC and many other media houses, those who listened to the president addressing the church leaders in Mfurila this afternoon and part of the evening, you asked me for 3. Of course, I would want to go on and on. But just from the president sharing with us, from other people talking about their own experiences, I'm sure many Zambians have met a young man or a young woman who says that they have a job as a nurse. That's a promise fulfilled in terms of job creation, in terms of ensuring that we have more civil servants, we have more public officers attending to our people in schools, that is teachers. That's the second promise, of course. In health institutions, that's medical doctors, other workers in these institutions who may, sometimes they call daily classified workers, whatever, but general workers and so on, nurses. All these are promises. The president talked about NAPSA partial withdrawal. That was a promise, fulfilled, done and dusted. Let's talk about free education. The president also talked about free education, as a matter of fact, this afternoon, even in Mufurila. Free education, it has been delivered. And now the president says, yes, we have delivered. We want to make sure that we ring-fence this right by making it law, so that no one in future would have an excuse whatsoever to take it away. As part of that promise, because some of the promises are fulfilled, and even something that may not have been promised as such, but goes to make even better the delivery of such a promise, they are being done. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the school feeding program. It may not have been promised in isolation or as a standalone promise, but it adds a lot of value to the promise for free education. All these promises have a direct impact on the Zambian people and on the livelihoods of our people.
Right. Speaking
One
of
promise that was also made was fixing the mining sector. I don't think any reasonable Zambian would say, the UPND government would say President Hakainde Hichilema has failed to fix the mining sector. I don't think so. Yes, some people may not be happy with the way certain things may have been done, but at the end of the day, conscious of the fact that things cannot be done as perfectly as some people would want to be done, you can agree that at least in terms of benchmarks, this promise has been done. KCM was in court, everyone knows, because of that attempt by the previous regime to liquidate it. Now that case has been resolved. What government now is doing is to ensure that there is increased production at KCM, that more people can be employed, that KCM can give more business to our own people in terms of local suppliers, contractors, and so on, so that people can have more money as contractors, local contractors, and pay their workers. That's how you put money in people's hands, give them more purchasing power, and so on. This is a promise done. And as a rider to that, the UPND promised even to revive mining assets that remained dormant for many years. And we have seen it with our own eyes. We've seen it with our own eyes what has happened in Rwansha, talking about Shaft 28. But I must hasten to say that we also have a lot of people in this country, that is relatively, I should have said some people, a few people in this country, actually that's the correct way to put it, a few people in this country who try to mislead and suspecting members of the public, spreading information contrary to what is on the ground. One promise that was made and fulfilled is the resuscitating of Mulungushi textiles in Kabwe. I was on some radio program just the other day where two callers on that program, both of them making the point that I don't live in Kabwe, therefore I don't know what is happening, what has been happening there. One of them claimed that there's nothing at Mulungushi textiles. There's nothing. He went further to claim that Ababantu, they have just bought one small printer which they have installed in the canteen. I'm not lying. It's there on record. If people can go to my Facebook page, Frank Bwalya, and listen to that program at some of another radio station in Lusaka, they'll find it. Claiming that there's nothing there. Those people just bought a small machine, they installed it in the canteen. A canteen is a restaurant within that institution. And that all those Chitenge material people may have been shown are not printed in Zambia, they are printed elsewhere. Another one said, but what you don't live here. Can you prove to us that there are people working there? There's no one working there. There's nothing happening there. There's nothing happening. Then I said, now, are you telling me that the entire ZNBC, private media institutions, private individuals, the Chinese government, our development partners who were present at that event would have gone there when there is actually nothing happening? Do you think that your president, who you elected, President Hakainde Hichilema, would actually fly to Kabwe to go and commission nothing? Because there's nothing happening there. Literally nothing. Do you think that would happen? Now, here is the contradiction. Before that, when the announcement was made that that promise, which has been fulfilled, finally the president will go and commission it, there were people, some people, who were saying that it was a campaign gimmick. Again, we challenged them. And I challenged them as follows. I said to them, if that is indeed a campaign gimmick, are you therefore implying that after the elections, when HH has won, because he's winning, all that equipment will be uprooted? In fact, I did a video It's on my Facebook page, Frank Bwalya. People can go and find it there. I, in fact, did a video. I've just remembered. You think that the president will cause to have that equipment, all of it uprooted, shipped back to China, the solar system that has been installed, and everyone who is employed at Mlungushi Textiles in Kabwe sent home because it was a campaign gimmick and the campaigns are over. Do you think the president of Zambia would do such a thing? What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say at that stage it was clear that there is equipment. At that stage it was clear and not in doubt that people had been employed. But those who want to create the impression that the UPND has failed, nothing has been achieved, were claiming that all these things would disappear. It's a campaign gimmick. Now, after it was launched, Mlungushi Textiles officially opened. Now they changed the story to say there's nothing happening there. I know that people in the opposition, I was in the opposition, sometimes you politic, and when you politic, when you are clever, you use general terms where people cannot say what you are saying is not true. It's difficult to pin you down, so to speak. So if, for instance, you say the commissioning doesn't mean anything because that business is not viable, and so on and so forth. It's at the end of the day, somebody can say, oh, it's debatable. But if you make a mistake to say nothing is happening there, no one is employed, you are not a smart politician. Because at the end of the day, there will always be people who are working there who can easily come and say, I work there, I'm on my way to work. It's very easy today with the development in ICTs for somebody just to pick their phone and say, I'm at work. I work here. So if you say there's no single employee here, at least there's one, myself. And beyond that, the country saw what is happening there.
All right, Father.
So in concluding on this one, what I'm trying to say is that the government, President Hakainde Hichilema, has performed beyond expectation, and I'll be explaining what I mean by beyond expectation. However, there are still some people who will continue to say nothing has happened. And some people are still talking about millimil for 50 kwacha. Millimil for 50 kwacha. The best answer for that comes from the farmer. I've started removing my maize from the small portion that I have. I do backyard farming. I'm removing some maize, putting it in storage and so on. We are the ones who can answer that question, that it's not possible to have millimil at 50 kwacha. Because government itself is paying a farmer, has been paying a farmer more than 50 kwacha per 50 kg bag of maize. 330 was the last was the price last year, if I remember very well. 330. How then can you buy millimil at 50 kwacha? So this is an odd argument.
But this could be an argument that people are saying when you came in as UPND, you found it at 120. What then caused the sudden rapid rise, to the 300? That at some point we even saw millimil for 450.
When you look at the market forces, I'll give an example of groundnuts. I again made a small short video. I think it was in January or late December. I made a small video. I was in town and I needed to eat some groundnuts, so I stopped. Some woman was vending, and I bought some groundnuts for 20 kwacha. Small portion, very, very small portion. I could even literally count the nuts in my hand. And I did a video. I said, look, this is what I get for 20 kwacha of nuts. Why? Because the nuts are now just coming out of the fields. So the supply is low. Very soon, the supply would be high. The demand will still be there, but the price will come down. The other day, as I went home, I just decided to pass through Bauleni Market because I live in State Lodge. I love groundnuts. I really love groundnuts. I stopped by and I bought groundnuts for 150 kwacha, 50 kwacha tins, meda as they call it. That's a lot for 50 kwacha. It's a lot. And I said to my wife, dry it, because when it's a bit dry and then you boil it, I love it even more like that. I'm trying to make a point. That the price of mealie meal will eventually come down, but not too low, not to 50 kwacha. It's not possible. It may not be feasible up to 50 kwacha. Because at the end of the day, government needs to pay a fair price to the farmer to, first and foremost, be motivated to grow that maize. Secondly, to make a bit of money, if they are on FISIP or whichever system they are using, that they can even grow into a bigger farmer. Because that's the purpose of FISIP, that support that the government gives to farmers, so that they can be more productive, they can grow more, pay hectareage, make money, have a bit of money to send their children to school. I'm deliberately saying that because I know somebody is going to call and say, oh, mwashala mchakale. A farmer doesn't need to sell maize to send their child to school because education is free. Education is free. Father, if they send their child to a private university, they may have to pay school fees, but even some of the private universities are benefiting from meal allowances as promised. Another promise. There are many promises. Another promise fulfilled by the New Dawn government. All right.
Speaking of free education, I know that you have cited it countless times, and of course, this is one of the achievements that the UPND government has put in place. Now, some parents or some sections of society still find, or have identified certain gaps. They say PTA fees, uniforms, books are now the new burden. Is free if the plate is still empty? And of course, there's issues of teacher-pupil ratio, which has been an ongoing issue for a long time. One teacher has to attend to more pupils now and have to deal with those numbers. There's the issue of desks that need to be purchased, and just basic commodities that should be able to provide quality education. Do you think because of the free education policy now, the quality of education that is being provided is as you intended it to be as the UPND government?
These concerns on the part of some members of our communities, first and foremost, confirm these sentiments. First and foremost, they confirm the fulfillment of a promise to deliver free education. If free education were not fulfilled, if that promise remained unfulfilled, these questions would not come up. So we shouldn't forget that, because sometimes we want to answer this question, we want to respond, forgetting that we are coming from a position of strength and achievement. And every positive development in society brings with it its own challenges. I was trying to search my mind for a word. I was almost saying side effects, but it's not an appropriate. But challenges that come with such, a new development in the community. So free education is a new positive development. It comes with its own challenges. People should be worried if the government, if the president who delivered free education ended at delivering free education and has not said anything or showed any plan about how that education is going to be improved, how you continue to improve it. Let's talk about marriage again, because I started with that example. You marry, I marry, bring my wife home. She may have our home now. She may have been there before when we were in courtship, and she may not have noticed that I don't have this, I don't have that, and so on, and the house is small, because love is blind, and it's blinder, if there's such a word, when you are in courtship. But now once you come together to live together, your wife, of course, will notice that the house is small, there are other people living with you, and it's maybe it would be better if that were not the case, because you're just starting a family. You don't have a car, you have to walk and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you are married to a man who has got a job. Now, I don't want people to look at me as somebody who thinks that when people marry, only a man is going to have the means and the wife just comes in to be looked after by the man. No, it's a collective effort. Sometimes a man would marry and they don't have a job. It's the wife who has a job. Sometimes these things happen. And sometimes the man would move to the house of the wife because she's got a house. And under those circumstances, they think it is perfectly in order. That's when you begin to realize that this is not in order, this is not in order, and so on. But at the end of the day, a big achievement has been recorded. Despite whatever people could have been saying and all the hurdles, you are together married. And you begin life together. Maybe your wife gets a better job. Maybe she moves now closer to a workplace. And that demand for a car maybe is lessened. Maybe the man gets a better job. Maybe even gets a job outside the country or within the country. Maybe he's posted, he trained as a nurse, and there comes a government like never before in the history of this country that recruits thousands of nurses. The husband finally gets a job. He could be a male nurse and so on. And things begin to change slowly. And these examples I'm giving are even personal examples. When I left the priesthood, for instance, when I left the priesthood, I didn't have a personal car. That's the truth of the matter. I didn't have a personal car. Because I said to myself when I was a priest, I would rather spend whatever money comes my way to educate my siblings and members of the family than to buy a car. When I had at my disposal more than 3 cars. More than 3 cars. When I was a priest. So I said, there's no need to buy a personal car. I remember at one time buying a Toyota, not a Canter, Toyo something, a small van. These things I'm saying, some people would agree with me. I was working as a parish priest in Iposokilo, that's St. Peter's Parish in Iposokilo. And one of my treasurer at that time, I don't want to mention names, I had a brother who was selling this van. I bought it, used it for some time, sold it to a friend of mine who ran a company, who was running a company on the Copper Belt. They needed transport. I sold it, but I didn't have a car to myself because I didn't see the need. So I'm trying to say that some of the examples I'm giving here also from my personal experience. My first car after leaving the priesthood was given to me by a priest friend of mine. He was studying in Rome. He bought a car, auto wrecker as we commonly called them that time, and needed somebody to go and pick it up from Dar es Salaam. And who does that? At that time, Frankson. They used to call me. And late Father Teddy Kayula, Father Chansa, nicknamed me Chuck Norris because I could do a lot as a young person. So I went to Dar es Salaam, picked up that vehicle. When he came back from the studies, he found the car intact. He liked it. By the time I was leaving the priesthood, he had bought another car and he gave me that car for free. And he said to me, Frank, tetule enda panshi. Wakula bonfya motoke, wakula ndipira panono. But I never paid him for that. And, somebody gives you a car to say you'll be paying me slowly. And at the end of the day, every weekend they're calling you, oh, come, they help you with this and so on. So these are some of the friends that I had made. When I look at where I am today, I'm able to see how God has been good to me, how I have developed. The same applies to a country. The same applies to the issue of education in Zambia. Yes, free education has been delivered. Yes, there are still challenges in this sector. Is the government committed to attend to those challenges? Yes. How do we prove? The unprecedented recruitment of teachers. The encouragement the president keeps making to members of parliament and communities to utilize CDF for more classroom spaces, to utilize CDF to make more desks, water reticulation in some remote places using solar and so on. The insistence by the president for everyone to send their children to school, because that's the best inheritance you can give to your child.
All right, Father, just for the sake of time as well, I would love us to really move really quickly on the number of questions that I do have for you. But ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is the Sky Forum, and we have Father Frank Bwalya, who is the Director General for Media under Presidential Support System. Pretty soon we'll be opening the phone lines so you can get to ask your questions, and on the number 09777 rather 885 that is 077 885 and of course 0966 100 as our alternative WhatsApp number. Father, you have talked about some of the challenges that every government can face. Name one major challenge, from drought, global prices, debt, where you now admit UPND could have acted faster or differently, and what would you change if you were given 2021 again?
There is no challenge that Zambia faced since 2021 under the UPND government, under the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema, where any honest, reasonable Zambian would say the government could have acted differently and the situation may not have been compounded. There is no single problem that we encountered in the last 4 years in this country where somebody can genuinely say that. I hear more people saying such sentiments over the issue of the burial of ECL, but sooner than later, in fact already, true information, the correct information of what has been happening has been coming out. And many people who may have initially thought otherwise are beginning to have their eyes open and realizing what the truth is, including those who were saying that the UPND government, in terms of acting differently, shouldn't have introduced free education, because you see now the standards of education have really dropped and so on. But God gave us the answer. God gave us the answer. We had a pass rate never recorded before in this country at grade 12. That was like God himself saying, kweno mwana wandie checha lebo mbesha. Mwana wanga asebenza. Sometimes vintu vivuta chabe. So aba bantu nibapase ko chabe ka answer on his behalf. You saw that unprecedented passing rate, to show that yes, the challenges are there, but the people are confronting those challenges. You know, it's like my friend, it's like a good friend of yours or even a parent giving you an asset that no one can ever give to you for free. You are given this asset. An asset, if when you work on it, you will surely be smiling going home. But it has challenges. It could be a bus that is given to you, but this bus has broken down. Maybe it knocked, as we say, I didn't know a bus, but bakupera for free. You can choose to complain that bampera chibasi chafwa, katushinelo bachisonkele, I have to do this and that. It's part of human nature. But others will actually realize that this bus, I can overhaul the engine, I can resolve these problems. The main asset is here, and I can make some money. Now, you are only able to do that, as President Hakainde Hichilema likes to say, when you have the vision to look beyond the visible, the apparent challenges. So there is no single challenge where anyone can genuinely say the UPND could have acted differently. Now, what are some of the major challenges this government faced? I'll only mention two because the others were triggered by these two. Debt. There's nothing President Hakainde Hichilema could have done other than what he did to successfully negotiate for restructuring the debt successively, making Zambia the first and so far only country to do it under the G20 framework. And that's why institutions beyond the borders of Zambia are recognizing the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema and putting him among those best performing leaders in the world. That's where it's coming from. So we are a country that should be welcoming other countries, their leaders, parliamentarians and so on, people from their central banks, to learn from the Zambian experience. And I know that there are these conversations at IMF level, at World Bank, African Development Bank, about Zambia doing more in terms of helping other countries that are also under debt stress. There's no other thing the government could have done. The other biggest challenge we faced as a country was drought. Now, what could have HH have done differently in the way drought was handled? Let's talk about the response in terms of taking care of our people. Because when we talk about, fixing the economy and so on, bringing investment in the mining sector and so on, people may think that they have a president who was actually predicted to be this big business-minded person, this capitalist who will pay no attention to the people on the ground and would not know what the people go through. These accusations were made before. But President Hakainde Hichilema has demonstrated, has proved them wrong by being a president who is focused on the ordinary people and how all the policies and achievements that this government has been scoring the side of the ordinary people. So drought triggered the escalation of social cash transfer. And almost every other month, the responsible ministry will inform the Zambian people that it was trying to expand the list because more people were affected, their livelihoods shattered by drought. Cash for work came on the back of that. Now, I'm only mentioning those which can be considered to be on the periphery in terms of how government handled the drought problem. And it was drought that triggered the economic malaise that we experienced in the last 2 to 3 years. When you talk about power deficit, it was caused by drought. Again, some people were claiming that Kariba Dam is full to the brim. HH agulisa chabe malaiti because wafuna kuti bapange ndalama zambiri. And today, just today, the president was saying some people may not have appreciated and may never appreciate the fact that you don't give up your markets. We need to continue exporting power because ZESCO needs money to continue saving the Zambian people, bring power to rural areas, service the people, and so on. But it didn't mean at the expense of consumption here. So he regretted that we had to recall. That's what government did. We had to recall our exports because of the situation that we had, because at the end of the day, our child in the house needed to eat.
And right, Father, just allow me, because our phone has been buzzing. Ladies and gentlemen, just hold on for a few seconds. We are going to get straight back to you. But before we get to picking up some of these calls, of course, you've talked about mining, and of course, you did sign it. You signed Mopani deals, you pushed new exploration, and yet copper...
Greenfield mines.
Yes.
And ZNS is yet to start a mine wholly owned by the Zambian government, which also demonstrates that we have a president that's not just thinking about foreign direct investment, but that is also thinking about increasing our stake, owning more of the mines in this country in terms of increasing the shares, but also opening our own mines.
Okay, now, however, we still have some miners on the copper belt, in Chingola to be specific, who still complain about jobs, the pay, as well as corporate social responsibility. How would you rate, within 30 seconds, Father, how would you rate UPND's mining management out of 10, and why should a miner or a mine in Kitwe agree with you?
The miners on the copper belt, I'm a copper person, and I go there quite often to see my mother and other interests I have on the copper belt. The miners are not complaining about the pay. They understand that it is reasonable. It can be better always. So they're not complaining about that. The miners, so the contractors were complaining about lack of jobs that has started to improve. Our Zambian people were complaining about lack of these mines giving jobs to the contractors. I think that's the same thing I was saying, but allow me to add a point to that one in terms of what the president said today. And he jokingly said to Honorable Kabuswe, jokingly, of course the president was joking, but still making a serious point that we need to make sure that the mines can follow this, because now it's law that a certain percentage of those jobs, purchases and so on, should be given to our local people. So the situation is not perfect, and no one is claiming that things are perfect, even on the mines. What everyone agrees with President Hakainde Hichilema is that we are not where we were in 2021. We are not where we were even 2 years ago. We are in a different space, and we will not be where we are next year, because things keep improving. Investment is coming in this space, and you can see that we have the right leadership in place.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines are now open. It's 0777-885-885. That is 0777-885-885. 4 years of the UPND. Has it put food on your table or taken it off? Yes or no? Then tell us why. Make sure you keep it under 30 seconds. Introduce yourself, your name, where you're calling from, and of course, what your question or contribution should be. Sky FM, good evening. You are through to the Sky Forum. Good evening.
You are currently on hold. Please wait.
Good evening.
You are currently on hold.
All right. Sky FM, good evening. You are through to the Sky Forum. Good evening.
Hello?
Yes, you are through to the Sky Forum. We can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from.
This is Mlenga in Lusaka.
All right, Mr. Mlenga, what's your question? What's your contribution within 30 seconds?
Bwalya Munishani.
Mwapoleni wa Mlenga.
Ilisiya bueno, ili update report hapa namba tulifuku. Ya mulelo ndolola bwino sana, because Zambia ale mvuso mulelo ndolola. So ndolola ndinama nebazi lera ndakya bafaza balitekanya bwino kulondolola. Amapromises president Hakainde Hichilema stress for fuel sana. Eyo n'abantu bambi abali mu kiuko abali 70 years 50 years bali mu kiuko tabasita promise, because nga telefone mwana kakyama promises eyo tusta promise mwana kashengi sana bambi bali da yabana katonda kusitira motoka bambi bali la no mwana kakumusire ndeke basita fyaki anje lukwati Hakainde Hichilema mu 5 years taikwa ni na 5 years bino bwini social cash transfer yali lundwa lukwa CDF kufunya pali 1 point chago jikusia ileta pali 40 million lukwati pasho withdraw ishimpia galenda ngati cash for work lukwati free education ndoto ulandile even you 7 abantu bote wale kifikira kifiyaki lelo tuamona na northern part of Zambia. We asked
that you, Mr. Mlenga, we asked that you start winding up because we have a lot of other callers as well that we need to give a chance to.
So, in conclusion, apama iloba bulombe bale chaindozi lukwati ba chifu misota lukwati ba chifu mutupakatandula lukwati ba chifu zama ama chifu kutitwa pendo lugemba lonche nombo mlandu wanshita.
Thank you so much. Please keep your views, your comments, your questions under 30 seconds, okay? Sky FM, good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you, sir?
I'm okay.
Your name and where are you calling us from?
This is Womu Sanje calling you from Kasama, Central Zambia.
Okay, Womu Sanje, please go ahead.
nkawo tu
Siwa mnyama
vereka
twarumba.
kuti
Mata vereka boka watu mnyama mwe.
twalumba.
We are speaking so well in Kasama right now. Coming to the issue we are discussing CDF and the free education. Hivi vitu viwili vitu vya watu wa position wazafanazi kufera pero community ni wakambira free education ni skulu ya lutu ya mahala nayo ni pakali ni soti sana asogolezi sota misebo kuno bana bakampanao na magreda kayanitaka bwana lero yapita nabo chabe magreda mu marugo heri ya kupanga mafida rolls kuno ukasama ayo mwandini muri bakuleka se mairida muri bakuleka se msikilize Mungu akudai sana leo tuongelea ni sana zibo.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sky FM, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. How are you?
Me, I'm good.
All right, sir, what's your name?
Honorable Mwalimu Yabuti
Nkawo tu.
Farumba. You are talking Mr. Chindayeni, Moses Southern Province.
All right, please go ahead within 30 seconds. Please put your statement across.
Yeah, first of all, kuna kutasha ba honorable abali mukati. Sibantu bose bereta bali na zero. Why nakamba so? Because banaona kuti country yatu kuita development kuselezera pamozi. That's why wanachita indoors HH. Ndiye vintu vamene vifunika mudala mulina nzeru ero mungatusunge mu Zambia. Ndiye bantu vamene tufuna aba vaso monga imwe mudala. Very question amene funa kukamba ni amene funa kufusa ni yakuti mu cyani mu PF bakamba kuti kwezeribe corruption, bakamba kuti mu UPND muri corruption maningi. So imwe mukamba ko branch vamene bakamba bene mundu virezi na bene given rulinders because bakamba ati UPND imakonka abantu kumanga abantu. So nishireze kufuna kuti bacha abantu bamire weze kupa ndalama ba government basirwe chabetu bareke kuyo mukamba ko branch pa issue bantu abene weze kupezeka corruption abene weze kumangiwa kai bakamba bamba kuti twali batandike yabo bahaga inde bayanda buyo kuti yani weyabwanga abantu kwiha kuti balete development nayi ungamire bafuna yasitike kwaki so muba uzako branch bamene bakamba bamene bwabwa ugayiza bakati yakantambo aba bamene batuvuta mu country yatu bamene benze kutumenya na mampanga. So apa manje mudara uchoka apa futhi pasikai prense kupemba kuti futhi muende ku radio inangu futhi mbahame kai bakamba kuti sewa makola zitima supporta chabe support. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. Maybe we take in the last two calls and then we get Father to respond on that one. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, comrade. How are you?
Fantastic. You're through to the Sky Forum. What's your name?
Yes, no other than senior citizen all the way from Toma. How's the Sky FM?
Sky FM is good. Senior citizen, we're glad to have you again today.
Yes, thank you.
Please
good evening, my honorable there.
Good evening.
Yes, twarumbaji mujindi kubandi nywe ba honorable kutumabora aluwo kutyaba na Zambia baonze kuziba bamba what is there, what is the truth for against what is Zambia. What I can say that get us tried by all means as you come on the radio. Mumabora radio you can be happy. That is a good governance. That we need in our UPND government. There is a peaceful government. Then let us try by all means to campaign for him as Mr. Hara in the Hira Masani Wamba about you just return back. Can you try to advise your fellow friend to say that in UPND there is freedom of speech, freedom of movement. When you do this, Manos will just continue. Even if Banabajolo Manos over here. But this time Manos will win what Bamuta Lotbo, Joya Babutensi, Wagure Temari, Bamujara, Bamugabahu, they are getting those small money, even though that they are small money, but they are getting the money. Then can you try to advise your fellow opposition member to please, can you try to work together so that we develop what our country? When you do that, this we say one Zambia, one nation. Senior citizen has gone. Is there any question before he goes?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you, my comrade, and good evening, all the interview people like Vajinda.
All right, thank you so much, senior citizen. We're just going to allow space for just one last call, or would you rather respond to some of the comments? I think most of them
Would that be the last caller then?
We're going to have to take another set of calls in the next 5 minutes. Okay. And but we'd rather have you respond.
You can still have another caller if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. But I think for now we do not have any other calls. Okay. But I think we only have one question.
Yes, about corruption in PF and so on.
Yes.
I must be honest enough that I was in PF. In fact, I was even deputy campaign manager for President Lungu in 2016. Some people may not hear me often talking about the corruption that was in PF and so on and so forth, because I was a member of the PF. I was sent into foreign service. I worked in Australia for 4 years. I was recalled when the UPND won. When I came back, of course, I joined the Socialist Party. I couldn't work with Fred Membe, and as you know, a lot of people have left the Socialist Party. A lot of people. And majority of those who have left after I left and said bad things about me and wondered, not all of them said bad things, wondered why I made such a decision. Today I drink tea with them, some of them, I drink coffee with them. We meet at events and they say to me, you saw something that we only saw later. And I feel sorry for our mother, but is it Dorica or Dolika? I think it's Dorica. It's R. I feel sorry for our sister, our mother. Every woman is our mother, for going to be a running mate to Dr. Fred Membe. She's going to regret. We need more women, the vibrant, robust women, to participate in politics so that one day soon we can have a woman as president. And if I had a way to speak to her, I would have said to her, if you can't stand as president this year, leave it, continue mobilizing and growing your party, then you can stand in 2031. Than you moving from one prospective president and you a running mate, and when it doesn't work with John